brought to you by Dale Carnegie of Orange County. This is the 411 on Leadership podcast, where we discuss common sense leadership practices with executives in Southern California to transform you into the leader people want to follow. And this is the 411 on Leadership podcast. We all got a dance party going on here by my partner in crime on my left, John Campbell. John, how's everything, sir?
It's going good. Good morning, Steve. How was your weekend?
A weekend was great. Obviously not as good as you because you came in with the tie today.
Oh, got to come in. I got to try to keep up with you when it comes to looking good on a Monday morning. I mean, you do it well, brother.
Thank you. But, we here in SoCal, we're allergic to ties. In any event, we are brought to you by Sitch Radio. Hey, if you're looking into starting your very own podcast, go ahead and connect with our man, Brian, here at sitchradio.com. He is here to assist you and make sure that you make your podcast dream a reality. So feel free to connect with our man, Brian, at sitchradio.com. And as we're going through this podcast, tell participants what they can do, or listeners what they can do if they're on the podcast.
Absolutely. So we really appreciate hearing from you. This is going to be interactive. And so as we talk with our guests and we bring up some of the leadership topics, if you've got questions, please add them to the comment section. And even if you're watching this on one of the recorded ones later, you can comment. We'll go back through. We'll see those. We'll react. And we just want to hear from you. And it really means a lot if you would like and subscribe so that we can keep you part of the notification as we come up with new shows every Monday. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for joining us. And as always, we're excited to be able to talk leadership with everyone today.
We are. So just to let you know what is happening here, we have been discussing success, failures, and lessons learned here in 2021. We affectionately like to call it the SFL.
The SFL
of the season. And so we're so excited to have a guest with us today, which we're going to be focused on and talking with her as it relates to the lesson of being adaptable. And as we have conversation with this guest, I couldn't think of a better person, considering everything that she's gone through and had to adapt to, than Renita Mollman. Renita Mollman, she is the CEO. She's the CAO, Chief Administrative Officer of Burns McDonnell, which is an engineering firm headquartered in Missouri, but has a location here in Southern California. As the CAO, she oversees corporate services, including human services, marketing, communications, security, travel, fleet, and facilities. She actually became the CAO in 2020, just before the pandemic happened. So again, when I'm thinking about being adaptable, she's done a great job so far, and the fact that she's led her COVID response team there at Burns and McDonnell. In addition to that, she is the chair of the Kansas City Vaccine Force that is working to make it easier and equitable for all Kansas Cityans to have access to a vaccine. Under her leadership at Burns and McDonnell, the California team grew from just a few employees to more than 250, and revenue has nearly quadrupled. So, Renita Mollman, glad to have you on the show. Welcome.
Great. Thanks, Steve, and welcome. I appreciate being here. Thank you.
We appreciate having you on the show. And so, Renita, as I mentioned, I couldn't think of a better person to talk about this lesson of being adaptable, because I feel like ever since you became the Chief Administrative Officer, you became that, I would say, just before the pandemic happened. So you've had to adapt in multiple ways to really make sure that your organization is successful. So if you mind just sharing with us a little bit more about your leadership journey and tell us why it's important for us as leaders to be adaptable based on your experiences.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Sure, I did. I took this role in January of last year. And then, as we all know, the pandemic kind of started hitting pretty heavily late February, early March. So that was really interesting. But first of all, I'll have to thank you for correcting that I am not the CEO. I don't want my boss to listen to this and they say, "Hey, man, did she get a new job or what?"
That was my error. So Renita is not responsible. She did not slip me any notes underneath any table or anything like that. That was all me.
All right. No, I appreciate
she might make a great CEO, but go ahead.
I'm sure.
Hey, thanks for that question. And what a 18, 20 months it's been for all of us, right?
Right.
But just to step back and in my leadership journey, I don't know that my journey is any different than a lot of other people's. It's mainly been, do your job well. I've always focused on doing the job that I had and not worrying too much about the job that maybe was in the future or a job I wanted. I never really planned out a journey for me per se in my career. My philosophy was, let's work hard, let's have some fun. And then, doors open. And I think you have to be adaptable and want to walk through those doors when they do open. I think being adaptable and being open to change, it is scary for a lot of people. When I moved to California 13 years ago now, I didn't know anybody. And it was a big lift going from an office that was struggling and very small to be able to move out there, uproot my life, move to California, not know what's anybody out there, anybody in the office, any clients, and just learn to grow and adapt and kind of go with the flow a little bit. I think if you make good decisions along the way and you kind of use your experiences that you've had through your life, you're going to make the right decisions and just move forward.
Renita, again, thanks for joining us. We're glad to have you here. And did you have anyone in particular in your leadership journey that spoke into your life and your role, or you felt kind of was a mentor to you going forward?
Yeah, over the years, we always have people that have come in and out of our lives. Probably some of the best leadership lessons I've learned are from maybe the leaders or managers in my life that weren't the strongest. You learn a lot from people that maybe you think, wow, they're really struggling, or I'm struggling working for them or working with them. And you learn a lot from just being with the people that you're like, wow, that's maybe not how to do something. I have had managers that in my life that have been fantastic managers, some maybe not as fantastic. But you take those lessons that you learn every single day, and the good things and the bad things. I think we learn more from the bad probably than the good things. I know the times I've struggled in, when I was a project manager, or way back when I actually did design and was a design engineer, making mistakes. I learned a lot more from the mistakes I made probably than the successes I had.
It's interesting you say that. If it's okay, and we want to say, hey, thanks to Terrence and Ahmad for joining us and saying hi back at you. But Renita, that's when we talk about making mistakes and growing from that, so often we feel like we're afraid to make a mistake, or, is it going to cost me my role? What's it going to, how am I going to be seen if I'm making mistakes? And I feel like I have to be perfect.
Right.
But you said you were able to learn some of the most from that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I'm an engineer, and I want to be perfect on everything, right? And the type of work that we do as engineers, when we're designing a bridge or designing a building, we need to make sure we're pretty close to perfect.
Yeah.
So that we don't have a catastrophic failure. However, as I've grown into more of a manager role and a leader, it's really about telling, like, I'll use an example. When we first started our COVID response, we didn't know. Nobody had a playbook. We didn't go to the shelf, dust off the playbook on how to respond to a pandemic. What I told the team that we're working with is, hey, let's make decisions. We're going to make decisions. Let's hope majority of them are the right decisions, but there's going to be a lot that are not the right decision. And when we make a decision that's not the right for our team or the organization, for all of our employees, we'll just regroup. We'll assess what we learned from that and then make a new decision and go forward. I think you can get frozen in time if you don't just make a decision and go forward. You can analyze any decision you make, even if it's a personal decision, going to buy a car. I mean, some people can't, if you can't go buy a car pretty quickly, you can analyze that decision over and over and get stuck in place and not move forward. And if you get stuck in place, I just don't feel like you're growing as an individual. And if you're not growing as an individual, I think it's going to be really hard for your organization to grow.
That's a good point.
So you kind of you hit on a nerve before when you
Uh-oh.
mentioned the fact of the analysis, and people can get frozen by analysis. So self-confession here, I suffer a lot from analysis paralysis, right? And
Yep.
so, for myself, I always want to make sure I have all the information before, I move forward, which it's great that we have that. But at the same time, if that freezes me into inaction, then we really miss out on the obstacles, or really miss out on the opportunities. Thank you. Of what our current environment provides, and I think that's all part of us being adaptable, right? When we're able to assess situations, and yes, while we're assessing the changing situations on how it is right now, it's important for us that we make those decisions to move forward based on what we're seeing in the environment. And this is what's just coming, or what just came to mind as we're having this discussion. What are your thoughts, Renita?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're never going to have 100% of the information as leaders, whether it's, leaders in our organization, leaders in our family, leaders in our community. You're never going to have 100% of the information you probably need to really make that right decision. But if you get the majority of it, and you kind of go deep into your gut, right? And say, hey, what's my gut telling me? What's my experiences? And I think your gut is just life, right? Your life experiences. And what are those life experiences telling you? Make that decision as best you can with 60, 70% of the information maybe you need, and move forward.
Cool.
Yeah, that is, what would you say has been the biggest asset to you in trying to get to that point of making that decision, to know when you have enough? Where is there a point where you feel like, okay, we are good enough? Is there a line, a threshold that you can kind of set there, or do you kind of have to just from experience and being around and doing it? Is that how you learn from it?
I feel like for me, it's been just living it, right? Living it every day and figuring out, number one, I think you need to assess what level of decision is this?
Right.
If it's like for our organization, if it's a decision we make and it's not catastrophic, it no big major enterprise risk for our organization, you can make that decision with a lot less information. If it's a bigger level risk to the organization, to your employee teams, to the enterprise, then you need to probably have a little bit more information and make sure you're assessing it right. And then reach out. I think as leaders, I think one of the most important things I've learned about myself, even in the past 5 years, and Steve and I, we probably go back 5, 6, 7 years now, is really figuring out you don't need to know all the answers, and go get some, just bounce ideas off somebody else, some of the other people in your organization that you work with, even somebody outside your organization that you have a lot of respect for, that you can bounce stuff off. I know anytime Steve and I get on a phone call, boy, we're just talking through all kinds of different things. So it's just great to have those connections, both inside your organization and outside your organization. Make some contacts that way, and then bounce ideas off people and say, hey, yeah, this feels right, or it doesn't feel right, and maybe this feels better.
We're talking with Renita Mollman. She is the Chief Administrative Officer of Burns McDonnell, headquartered in Missouri with a location. They have many locations, but one location here in Southern California. And so we're so grateful to have her on the podcast with us. And we're seeing a number of comments that are coming in the chat. And so, John, if you don't mind reading those comments, for some reason, I'm having a hard time accessing those comments. However, if we can just address some of those before we move forward, because I did have a question for you, Renita, just about one of your passion points.
Oh, did you want to just? Oh, well, so we've got, thanks, Richard, for added there. The lights will never all be green. Learn as you go. So that's a great follow-up to one of your comments, I think, Renita. And then Terrence, we appreciate you adding that. I love it. Your gut, it's life experience and living it, going through that. I think some of those, and I've always heard when they Steve and I kind of have a banking background, and we've interacted on that side a lot. But you always hear in banking, and for tellers, the best way to know real money is to handle it a lot. right? That's the best. You don't learn to identify fakes. You learn to identify real bills. And by doing that, you know what's not good. And I think, as you as a leader and you're trying to understand and analyze, being in it, living it, learning and gaining that knowledge really helps to speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to hit to another passion point of yours. So, Renita, we have been focusing, if we look at the workforce landscape and the focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially in the engineering field where it is more male dominated,
Yes.
the engineering field. So, tell us about how the role of being adaptable, tell us how that fits in with the environment that you're trying to build in it being more inclusive, not just of women, but of ethnicity, of sexual orientation, whoever it is. Tell us about that, and how are you making it work there at Burns McDonnell?
Yeah, that in and of itself is a journey, right? When I graduated college, there was 11-12% of the graduating engineers were women. Fast forward 33 years, it's still only at about 18%. So, still not the majority of the engineers are still not women coming out of school. And that's the same with, underrepresented minorities as well in the engineering and STEM fields in general. So being adapted, when I started here, there's 6 female engineers in the company. So talk about having nobody that looks like you in the organization that does what you do. But that's just a process of growing and really doing your job well. I've always just focused on doing my job as best I can and being recognized for that, not being recognized because I'm a woman or getting that promotion because I'm a woman. I wanted my promotions and my leadership journey to be about what I did, not about who I am. So it was really focusing on that, but really adapting then. And as now we're getting more focused on talking about DE&I initiatives, really it just comes down to that communication and helping people that connect each other, find the commonality between us all, not the differences.
Yeah.
It's easier to focus on what we all enjoy or what we're all passionate about rather than worried about, you're a woman and I'm not, or, you're Black and I'm not, or whatever the case may be, whatever those differences might be. Let's just focus on what our commonalities are. And hopefully we have a common purpose for why we all come to work and our jobs and our careers and provide for our families going forward.
As we have these types of conversations just around diversity and inclusion, one of the things I like to focus on is our responsibility as leaders is to really create that sense of belonging within our organizations, really just having that environment where anyone, regardless of their background, ethnicity, whatever, they feel like they can bring their authentic selves to work. I would say a few weeks ago, I had probably one of the best compliments I could have received as it relates to within, a workplace environment. And the person told me, it says, hey, you know what? Because of, what you've done, you've allowed me to bring my authentic self to work. And for me, that was like something that was, that really meant a lot, meaning that, we provided that space for them not to put on an act, not to put on, a persona or anything like that. And it allowed them to really be themselves at work. And once that people are their authentic selves at work, they're able then to bring their best work. And then we all benefit and grow as an organization. And so, Renita, the question I would have for you is like, what are some of the things that you all are doing now in terms of creating more of that sense of belonging within Burns and McDonnell?
Yeah, great question. And, we've all been through the last year and a half for our country's been tough, right? We've had the pandemic, we've had some social unrest, we've just been more divisive in our country than we probably have been in a long time. What we focus on within our organization, and first of all, we focus on to our employees is we can only control what's within our organization for the most part.
Sure.
We can all, give back to the community and get out there and do a lot with the community. But we really try to focus on what we can control and what we can change. Part of that is, we do have a DE&I strategy manager that he really spends his time focusing on connecting people, listening. He does a lot of listening, and with our employee resource groups or with some of our other alliances internally. And it is amazing what happens when you just ask people what their concerns are and how can we help, and let's just open up the door and have a talk. And communication. And so much comes back to communication. It's just so important to always have those doors open. And like you said, we want people to be their authentic self when they come to work. That's when they're going to do the best for themselves, their families, and our organization. If you have to have two different personas, per se, one in the office and one outside of the office, it's, you're focused too much on that and not doing what we need to do to advance our organization, help our clients, and help our clients and their projects be as successful as they can be.
We've heard a lot, Steve, about communication and its importance, not just today, but that's been a topic of discussion. It's one of those things, Renita, that we know here, but does it always translate? Have you found anything that has been successful in the way that you approach communication with your team or with the organization?
Yeah, I think especially during the last 18 months with the pandemic we're in, I think even if I don't have a lot to say, I do a weekly update to our company on COVID, what we're doing, what our actions are. Through the summer, maybe they weren't weekly, they were every 2 or 3 weeks. I realized that just having, even if I wasn't saying a lot to the organization, just having that communication out there weekly was just a comfort for a lot of people, to let them know we are thinking about them. We want them to be safe. We want to do what's right for them and their families, and just being that empathetic ear when they do respond back. And if they do respond back to myself or somebody on our team, we do respond back. Okay. It's just not going into a black hole. I like to listen more than I talk. So this is a lot of talking for me. I'm a more natural listener than talker. So, but I think so many of us as leaders, we think we have to have the answer. And you brought that up earlier. We have to have the answer to everything. We have to interject all the time. I feel like if I've stepped back and then let my team think about it, make a decision, they more than likely will get to the same conclusion that I would have gotten to. But I just think that communication, you just can't have enough of it anymore. I think it's just really important to always communicate, let your teams know you're thinking about them, that we're advancing things, what we're doing. Even if you don't think it's a lot, I think to them it's a lot more than you think it is.
And I think just to continue on with that, I know even in my areas of leadership, sometimes I think the team knows it, but because I know it and I internalize it and I'm expressing it, but I haven't communicated that directly. Right. And it's important sometimes, I think like you mentioned, sometimes it feels like we might be over communicating, but oftentimes we're not. Yeah, we're finally getting to that point where they're like, oh, that's what you need.
And it's almost to the point of cliche, right? When you hear about it, it's like communication, people are like, yeah, I get it. But at the same time, though, we cannot overestimate or underestimate. Is it overestimate or underestimate? We cannot emphasize it. That's the word I'm looking for. We can't emphasize it enough, especially when we talk about what's going on, not just as it relates to the pandemic, but as it relates to what's going on within the business environment. When we're talking about supply chain woes going on right now, when we're talking about still when it comes to the pandemic, it starting to come back up again in terms of like the caseload, and so that's on people's minds. And so when we're talking about the Great Resignation, people leaving jobs at record numbers, and leaders are looking at ways in which they could retain their people. Communication we need to be saying it a lot or emphasizing it, because it is essential that we do that to mitigate the effects of what's happening and what's going on.
Right.
We were talking with Renita Mollman. She's the Chief Administrative Officer at Burns and McDonnell. And thank you so much for those that are putting their comments in the chat. Thank you, Terrence. Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Rich. Thank you to all of you that are putting your comments in there. We see those, we recognize those, and we appreciate you being a part of today's podcast. Yeah. And so, Renita, as we're talking about being adaptable and this whole idea behind us being able to not only recognize the changes that are going on, but us, having to not go along with them, but just be proactive in terms of how we can handle those changes. What is that one practice that business leaders could do today or this week to become more adaptable at their organization?
Wow, that's a lot there, Steve. One thing.
I know there are plenty, but I know that you've got one of the plenty that's in mind that's sticking out for you right now that you can share with others.
Absolutely. I would say step back, be silent, and listen. I think we all need to listen to each other. I think we need to be kind to each other. We need to give each other some grace and some space. Wow. And I just think it's so important that on a weekly basis, you just step back and I say, be silent for a minute, and just listen to people and be kind to each other and give all of us some grace right now.
Mm-hmm. And Renita does practice what she preaches, by the way.
Yeah,
that is 100% truth from what I've experienced. Go ahead, John.
No, I think it's important because oftentimes we forget that our fellow workers are humans.
Yeah,
and dealing with stuff, and we don't always know because we don't always talk about personal things at work. But you could be dealing with a loss of a loved one, or family members are going through things. You never know what's going on. And thank you for that. That's great advice as us as leaders is to stop and listen and look at our teams like that. So thanks so much, Renita, for sharing with us, and just a great dialogue. And I know that it's obvious that our listeners and watchers today have appreciated you so much. We really appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah. So Renita, tell us before you go, tell us a little bit more about Burns and McDonnell and their work in the community, not only there in Missouri, but here in Southern California.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very proud of Burns and Mac and all that we do in our communities. One of our Mac culture principles is that we invest for a better world. Mm-hmm. And we really live that every single day. We do have a foundation that we do share our treasures with our organizations and nonprofit organizations and those that need help in our communities. But we also give our time and our talent as well, whether it's helping build a house or just the time volunteering out in the community. We do firmly believe as a company that we're better together, and we have to really invest in our communities where we live and work every single day. And we have to do that to help bridge our communities up, build them up, help our communities grow and prosper as well. And if we're fortunate enough to do that and help that, we definitely need to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Renita, we definitely appreciate you having. For some reason, I'm having a hard time talking today, but it's all good. We appreciate having you on the show. Yeah. Remind us again, please tell us, how can people connect with you online?
Oh, they can definitely connect with me on through LinkedIn. I am active on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to find me.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, listen, thank you again for joining us, taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us this morning. And we look forward to having you on another podcast. It's always great connecting with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Steve. And John, great meeting you. And it was great chatting with you this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We appreciate great time. And if hopefully you've been watching this and contributing again, if you're seeing this at later time, please continue to add comments and we'll follow up with you. And Steve, if I'm a leader here locally in Orange County, I've heard some of those things and I want to put them into practice. What are some of those tools and resources that I can utilize on my leadership journey?
Sure. So for those that have registered for this particular podcast on our website, LinkedIn, we will be sending a resource for you. It is entitled Managing Change in the Digital Era, 5 lessons for leaders, just providing some practical tips on how they can manage change in their organization and be more adaptive as leaders. In addition to that, if you also go on our website at ocdalecarnegie.com, which is part of the show notes, we also will be facilitating a free online webinar focused on adaptive and agile leadership. We encourage you to be a part of that. Again, this is a webinar that we're going to be facilitating with one of the premier persons as it relates to organizational agility. I really need to drink coffee before the start of the podcast. Organizational agility. And so his name is Mike Richardson. He's actually going to be on the podcast in the next couple of weeks. So we'll get to hear a little bit from him. But those are a couple of resources. I encourage you, go on our website, ocdalecarnegie.com. You can find more information about that particular webinar scheduled for December the 10th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then also, if you're registered for this podcast, we're going to send you a free resource that focuses on how we can best manage change and be adaptable as leaders moving forward. And so with that being said, John, another podcast in the books. We just want to say we thank you, Renita, for joining us on the podcast today. Any final thoughts from you, sir?
Yeah, it's one step at a time. If you're a leader, don't be afraid to invest in yourself, to find ways to learn, to take that one step to be better today than yesterday.
Absolutely. So remember, as we end this podcast, remember, managers light a fire under people while leaders light a fire in people. Have a great week.
Thank you.